Hey, everybody out there in college football land. It is the Big House Breakdown. Back again for the right reason. It's a new season. You know how we do it here with the I Told You So's and the vital breakdowns that you need to hear. No crap analysis, just the calluses. That means the hardcore truth about everything Michigan football. So, Michigan football just this weekend played their first game of the season against the Fresno State Bulldogs and won by the tune of 30-10. And this is the recap on that game. You're going to get my keen insight. You're going to get my analysis that you probably will be very different from a lot of things that you'll hear out there on these or any other airwaves. Because I draw from my, almost 35 years of being involved with the sport, both as a player, as a coach, on every level except for professional. So let's make it happen. All right. So Michigan played Fresno State and they won by the tune of 30-10. And I'm not going to say it was uninspired, but it was a good matchup because they were a scrappy team. They were a tough team. They wanted it. I believe they wanted to beat Michigan. I believe they wanted to actually show the world that they could be a giant killer by taking on the Michigan Wolverines and beating them. But that didn't happen. And as you can see by stats on the screen, I'll go over it really quickly. On the Bulldog side, Fresno State of it all, Mikey Keene, 22 for 36, 235 yards, one touchdown, two interceptions. Malik Sherrod, 14 carries, 24 yards. Jalen Moss, receiver, 6 receptions for 97 yards. Those were the standouts in that regard. I'll do some defensive stuff in a minute. And then for Michigan, the standouts, Davis Warren, 15 for 25. He was named the starter for Michigan. He had 118 yards, one touchdown, one interception. We'll get into the ins and outs of that in a moment. Khalil Mullins, 15 carries for 92 yards. And then Colston Loveland, 8 receptions, 87 yards, and a touchdown. I'll go over some equally as interesting stats. They only wound up with 9 total yards rushing because Mikey Keene took so many losses, minus 30 in the yards, and they counted those against Fresno in the stats. So they only wound up with positive 9 yards, even though he had 27 as a back. Like I said, Jalen Moss had 97 yards as a receiver. Magdalena has 6 receptions as a receiver for 67 yards. Raylan Sharp had 2 receptions for 23 yards and a touchdown. That was, we'll get into all of that. Cameron Lockridge had an interception. He's the talented corner that they had who picked off an underthrown ball by Davis Warren. And then Ezra Christensen had a sack that was kind of like a breakdown right up the middle, out of the center position. And then, of course, Cameron Bracker, 22, the safety, had 7 tackles to lead the team. On the Michigan side of the ball, like I said before, Warren completed 15, a touchdown and interception. Alex Orji had a 3-yard pass to Donovan Edwards for a score. Khalil Mullins, 92 yards, the bulk of the carries. Alex Orji, 32 yards running the ball, average of 6 yards per carry. Very important right there. That's going to probably provide dividends next week against Texas. Dono had Donovan Edwards, Super 7, as I like to call him, 11 for 27. And Samaj Morgan had a jet sweep that went for 9 yards. And then there was a sack of Davis Warren that was like a negative 9 yards. Colston Leveland, 87 yards or 8 receptions. Beastly output. Tyler Morris, 3 for 15. That has to improve. Kendrick Bell, uh, 11 yards. We have to explore him some more. Samaj Morgan, we need to get him in more possession receiving opportunities. We need to scheme him. Josiah Stewart had 2 sacks. Rajon Benny came in with a sack. Will Johnson had the super duper interception to seal the game. He made himself some money in the pros with that interception, and he rose his draft status with that interception. First game out of the gate, Super 2. The Buffs. Will Buff Johnson takes it to the house when the team most needed him. Zeke Berry, tip drill interception. And Makari Page should have had an interception. And Quentin Johnson had an interception called back. TJ, lots of subs by, the Wink Martindale, the new defensive coordinator, lots of subbing. Dominic Zavada, 3 for 3 for 12 points. Crucial. Can't say enough about a 55-yarder. You know what I mean? That's a hell of a foot. You know what I mean? And of course, Tommy Doman was, clutch as always, giving our defense great when he had to flip the field, giving the defense great field position to start and throughout the game. So let's get to the analysis. Well, quarter one. No, you know what I'll do? I won't do it by quarter because I don't think it needs that much analysis. I'll give the game grades. So I'll give the defense game grade a B plus. The Fresno offense was clearly outmatched by the Michigan defense. Our speed on defense, our scheme on defense had Keen obviously reeling. If you watch the game, you'll see many passes came out early, came out late, floated, wasn't where they were supposed to go, and still he was able to get 235 yards and a score. So good for him. So I'm sure once their season is fully underway, this will be a team to be reckoned with in their Group of 5 schedule. They will take this hard loss, learn from it, kiss their boo-boos, and probably win that division. Mountain West, right? So the interesting thing about what the defense did in the B plus effort is I believe that they basically was in Keen's head. They were in his head a lot. And that's what you want to see. Having that sort of a complicated Baltimore Ravens scheme, you want that scheme to get in the head of quarterbacks. And that happened. You saw times throughout the night he went on the sideline 3 and out, or not being able to score, and the coaches had to punt it. And you seen the look of, dag, I wish I could do more. You saw a look of defeat. You saw a look of, perplexity at certain points. The dude was rattled. And even though they had a quick hitting offense, they took some deep shots. They scored on one of them. For the most part, what you want to see is a scheme like ours, as complicated as it is, and what it does to opposing quarterbacks. You want to see the opposing quarterbacks get rattled. If they're not getting hit as much as they usually or should be getting hit by the pressure, which he did. He got rocked a couple of times. What do you call that? Stewart hit him, sacked him twice. Bell was in, Moore was in there a bunch of times. Josiah Stewart, I already said him, and Jayshon Barham provided a lot of pressure. Rajon Benny got a lot of pressure, and then of course, the gift from the football gods, um, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, you know, got in that culo throughout the night. Pressure, pressure, pressure cooker. And I believe that's what in turn led to the what should have been almost 4 picks on the evening. It was 2 picks on the stats, but it should have been 4. If we're telling the truth. Um, and that's what you want. That's what you want from your defense. You want your defense to rattle the opponent quarterback so that the system is not running. It's not smooth sailing for them. It's just not pitch and catch. You want them to think about what they're doing. You want their timing off. And that's important if you're going to play a Texas team with a quarterback that you're going to see doing very similar things in Texas next week. Now, a lot of people seem to have problems with the way that Wink Martindale was substituting the defense. I don't really have an issue with it. And I don't even have an issue with what he was trying throughout the game. Because to me, this was a glorified preseason game. It's going to count on the books as the first game of the season. But it was a glorified preseason game. It was a game to get the kinks out. And they had to shuffle personnel, see what worked where against a quality opponent. That wasn't a poo butt. That wasn't a cupcake. It wasn't like last year's schedule where you played East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green, and you knew that you were going to clearly outclass those teams. This Fresno team was scrappy. I wouldn't be shocked to see them make noise throughout the season in a real substantial way, even make their way into kind of a last minute ditch effort to get into the college football playoff. That wouldn't shock me because their offense, they return a lot of production. Their offense is pretty good. They have a pretty good defensive line. Their DBs are gamers. So that wouldn't shock me to see this very same team in it at the end of the season. But as far as this game was, they were outclassed by the Michigan defense. And what else I will say about the Michigan defense? So I gave them a B+ grade. The reason why I gave them a B+ grade and not an A grade is because as a coach and a football, kind of as a coach, as I graded the game, as I looked at it again in all 22, and I graded every series, not every player, but every series. I'll let the Michigan coaches grade every player. Every series, I saw some things that weren't the best as far as, the team was concerned. Now, that can be for a lot of reasons. It could be that they knew this was a warm-up for Texas, so they weren't going all out. That might be a thing because there is preservation is in those games, the players like to preserve themselves because they know they have to give it all. They have to give it all up the very next week. And also, Wink Martindale was subbing a gang of those very players. Subbing a gang of them. You saw Cameron Grant. You saw TJ Guy, Rajon Benny, Etta. You saw a bunch of dudes in different situations. You saw Michael Pollard, who just looked way out of sauce with it. I wonder what's going on with Ricky Johnson. Maybe he's hurt, which is why Michael Pollard had to come in. You saw Amir Hall, the new transfer cornerback that we got, and he came through and made some, had a quality impact on defense. You saw a lot of substitutions, and you should, especially the way that the season is laid out. You really have no wiggle room to breathe and to kind of take it easy. Last year you did with the cupcake series of those first 3 games. This season, you don't have that luxury. You got Texas, You got USC right around the corner. Then you got all these big. You got four huge games throughout the season on top of the regular schedule, including rivals that you all have to win if you want to defend the title. So you have no wiggle room. You have no room for just working out the kinks. You have to try it all this week or the last game to make sure you're ready for a team like Texas that ran away with their game. I believe they won 50 something to either 0 or 10 or a very low score, 7, something like that. They won by a very wide margin. They scored. They're probably feeling really good. This will, next week will be a test for both teams. So defense did their thing. My only pet peeve were the penalties. I want the defense to cut down on silly penalties, but even the commentators during the game, the announcers on the television were kind of like, you could have went either way with the way that the refs call those penalties. So not really something that you want to harp on. And then, but you want those to go away, because if those interceptions stuck, uh, those things would be a tremendous benefit possession wise for a team like us who wants to strangle the clock. So every time you can get an extra possession and strangle that clock, that's always a positive for the Michigan Wolverines that want to run that ball constrictor offense and put the other team in peril, who, if they want to, throw the ball all over the field in a spread look, they feel tight because they're not getting those opportunities. Because, of course, if you give us the ball back 4 extra times in the course of a game, which was how many potential interceptions took place, we're going to get a short field. And then, of course, points are going to be the result, because we're just that good. We have those type of people on offense. So defense, I just want defense to cut down on the penalties, and I want the defensive tackles to stop taking so many sides when they're, just remember your fundies, remember fundamentals, make sure that, when you're coming up field, gap integrity, make sure your run fits are what they're supposed to be if you're the defensive tackles. I think they will against a team like Texas. You have no luxury not to. I think against a team like Fresno State, you're kind of taking chances where you don't necessarily know. You think you can get away with a couple of things because of the caliber of opponent that you're playing. And they did. They got away with a couple of bad discipline, bad run fits, bad technique, bad 3-1-2 technique. When you're, gap integrity is important, run fits are important. Love Jay Sean Barham and Ernest Houseman running around. That was great to see. All of the substitutions, people are boohooing about the substitutions. I don't have a problem with the substitutions, only because of the demand on the schedule. The demand on the schedule is crazy. So you have to get everything that you need to see. You have to have an evaluation that game in order to make sure that you're putting players in the best scenarios to be the most effective when they're playing Texas. I would have liked to see Cole Sullivan a little bit. I don't know if he got in. Let me look at the stats real quick. I don't think he was a part of the defensive stat line. Jimmy Rolder, McBurrows, Makari Page. Yeah, he wasn't part of the stat line. So even if he got stats, he wasn't in. Or, Brandon Hillman was in. Wow. Okay. I didn't know Brandon Hillman was in. Wow. They went that deep on the depth chart for Brandon Hillman. Wow. Okay. Well, either way, I don't think Cole Sullivan played, but I think he is a wily, energetic enough, rook freshman that you could deserve to give him some stats. I think he could replace Roller. Now, does that mean he knows the playbook the way he should and he could be effective in that way? That remains to be seen. But now with more coaches and more analysis being allowed on the actual sideline, you could kind of tell him what to do, get him in there, get him some, firsthand experience. You know what I mean? Let him get in football shape, let him get in game shape, because I think he's going to be that rookie dude once he starts to, you know, get an opportunity to shine and get some reps in real live games. But anyway, so I'm not going to harp too much more on the defense. The defense was a B plus effort. I like what I saw out of the DBs, except for some of the chances that Will Johnson took during the course of the game. I think he will understand the matchup priority against Texas and won't take those chances unless he clearly knows he can make that play, interception, and like he did at the end of the game where he clearly knew he could make that play. And that's also due to a lot of film study when they came out with that bunch formation to the boundary, and then he knew what that was, and that's just read 2 through 1, and boom, that quick screen came, and he jumped it off to the races. TD, everybody's partying in the big house. So defense was dope. I really liked what the defense is doing. People went crazy over that zero blitz that Wink called in the second quarter. I'm not going crazy over that, because if you're going to call it, if you're going to experiment with that versus a team, you're going to do it with either Fresno State or Arkansas State. You're not going to do that versus Texas. Or you might want to be putting some things on film for Texas to think about. And, you might be trying to bait Texas into some sort of bad play. Show zero. They read it. They say, oh, this is what we saw against Fresno. They go to some sort of hot read, and boom, we picking the ball off again. I'm going to say this last thing about the defense. I said it a little early. I'm going to say it again. If those 4 interceptions, potentially 4 turnovers that happened in the game, if we could do that every game and give our offense more possessions, or better yet, a short field, look out, because we're going to put points on the board, and that's going to be a nightmare for opposing teams. For sure. For sure. So let's move on to the offense that everybody's, crapping in their diapers about and going crazy. And, as the title says, be easy, no season jinx, just working out the kinks. And I believe that's what it was. So Davis Warren gets the start. He comes in, he's spinning the ball. By the way, he spins a great ball. I'm not going to front. The young man spins a great ball. I'm not the biggest fan. Maybe he can make me a fan, but he spins a great ball. Similar to JJ, I wasn't a great JJ fan. I didn't know enough about JJ, but when it was all said and done, I was a JJ fan. I loved his moxie. I loved the way that he commanded the team. I loved the way he commanded the field. He walked on the field like he was the best thing since sliced bread, and he showed it to be so. Like, I know I have a plethora of resources as a quarterback, but I'm the ish too. And then he eventually took over in that regard. Now Davis Warren, some people say they didn't like the way that he read the field. Okay, that might be the situation. That might be the case. He may need to take some time and work out his reads, and he should. But then we also don't know what the coach is. We don't know what Kirk Campbell is telling him. We don't know what Sharon Moore is telling him about how to manage the game. We don't know what those directives are. We don't know what the coaching game plan was for how he was spinning the ball. The one I know he wish he could get back was the underthrown deep pass to Frederick Moore. If he throws at just 3 yards more and makes Frederick Moore run under it, I think that's a touchdown. Even if Frederick Moore has to dive or slide or whatever manipulation, whatever athletic thing he has to do to get the rock and score, I think that would have been a score. So I think he understands, like, let's give the ball some air, put some air under that ball, and at the very least make it incomplete if you can't connect with the receiver. Um, they said that a lot of people are yawning about the underwhelming performance by the receivers. Now, it was underwhelming, but I think it was a vanilla game plan to begin with. I think they were all running 7-on-7 types of routes, not showing a whole lot of creativity out of the playbook. Very base route tree type of routes. And that may account for why there's no separation. That may account for why there's not a lot of connection and why the stats were so low for that group of receivers, speaking on, you know, Tyler Morris, Samaj Morgan, and Frederick Moore. But then again, as the game progressed, that dude, C Love, Colston Loveland, came to play. You know what I mean? Eight, what was it, 15 catches, I believe he had? Some monster number like that. Let me go back and make sure I'm telling you guys the okay, I'm sorry, 8 catches for 87 yards. So the dude was beastly, not 15, but 8 catches for 87 yards. 8 catches, 87 yards. Had a beastly game. If the game was on the line and they needed him, it was good to see. I think he'd be there. It was good to see him split out in some circumstances and still able to perform in the flow of the game and execute versus execute deep outs as, you know, a boundary receiver. I thought that was great. And I was like, wow, that's really going to be a thing we can rely on during the season. And I think it was vanilla. So I think you're going to see a little more of a opening up the playbook next week. They have to. There's no reason to not, you know, show what you got versus an opponent like that, like Texas. So I think you're going to see more of the passing tree, more of the Michigan passing playbook next week. And you'll see the receivers play more of a crucial role in how the game is decided. Like what I saw from Kendrick Bell, his height is needed. Would have loved to see Amarion Walker get on the field. His height, speed, and athleticism is needed, even if he's a decoy. Get him in there, let him run a streak up the field and hold the safety. Drag the safety deep so you can get some underneath stuff working. Maybe they didn't want to show that either, because maybe that's some of the things they plan to do versus Texas. And then another thing I would like to see is them get Donovan Edwards more acclimated to the passing game. I thought Warren his passes were a little flat to Donovan Edwards, and I would love to see Michigan kind of combo the three receivers. I would love to see them run some games with Kendrick Bell. I would love to see them run games with Kendrick Bell, Colston Loveland, and Donovan Edwards, and some complicated route patterns that scheme one of them open so that, Warren can hit them. He's got a nice tight spiral, nice quick release, nice good ball. I would like to see that, especially Donovan needs to be part of the passing offense earlier. And I think that would increase, that would keep the linebackers on their heels, knowing that they may have to drop to cover Donovan Edwards coming out of the backfield and Colston Loveland in the same set. And then if you have a big, tall receiver like Kendrick Bell, maybe you could throw him some fades or some jump balls. And, maybe those things pay dividends. And I think you will. I'd like to see Amarion Walker get on the field with his height and his speed and athleticism and do some things. And then, of course, the two smaller receivers in Morris and Morgan, want to see more of them, do some more intermediate highs and lows routes and, providing more, I guess, intricate ways of scheming, getting involved in some more intricate ways to get open in the passing tree. But everybody's going crazy over Warren and Orgy, whether or not Orgy was supposed to be the starter. Orgy comes in, he gets that one kind of rollout, kind of waggle, skips the ball in the dirt instead of hitting the man in the flat. That's not very encouraging. You're not going to get the favor of your coaches. When you get back to the meeting room, you don't want to look at that play at all because he should have hit that dude in the numbers. And Alex Orgy can throw the ball, man. I've seen him, and even in his summer workouts, do some really amazing type of throws. Is he consistent as he needs to be? No. But I've seen him make some really great type of throws. Do I think that? And first of all, I already knew it was going to be a 2 quarterback system. I already knew it. Sharon Moore is a Harbaugh disciple. He's a Harbaugh student. Harbaugh had the very same game plan a couple years back with K. McNamara and JJ. That paid dividends. They went back to that same format. And I think we're going to need Alex Orgy to give us an edge when it comes to performing in the game, give the offense an edge, because he just was not touchable when he couldn't be touched when, he pulled that ball on the reads and he had the QB powers, always positive yardage, if not, game breaking plays. So, Sharon Moore has to make sure that Orgy is ready to play. Both his arm is ready, his confidence is ready, because his legs and his body is, he's a Hulk of a quarterback. So you want to make sure that that arm and that confidence is up as much as possible. Get him throwing as many passes as he can on that sideline. Get him throwing as many passes as he can in warm-ups. Make sure that all the gifts and the tools are warmed up and ready to go before the game starts. So when he's called on, he can be effective as possible, not come in the game cold because he's charting stats or giving signals on the sideline. Let that be somebody. Let that be Tuttle's job. Tuttle's hurt, but Tuttle's still cerebral enough to do those type of things. Let Tuttle do that. Let Alex Orgy stay warm so that if he needs to come in, he's not coming in and that's the first pass he's thrown in 2 quarters, a quarter and a half, 3 quarters. You know what I mean? The young man needs to stay warm. He needs to keep his confidence up. And I think if you keep his throwing tree or his throwing variety in the intermediate range, rolling out of the pocket, RPOs, those sorts of things. And he's going to need to do that because you don't want him to be predictable when he comes in. You don't want him to be the only, they know and they can guess what Alex Orgy is going to come in and do. Oh, let's run. Let's run. And then if you guess run and we burn you over the middle in a seam to Colston Leveland or to Klein for that matter. We didn't see Klein either. Want to see some of him. Heard a lot about his athleticism. So I think we'll see a little bit of him in the Texas game. He might get a touch or two from the passing offense, as it were. He won't come in cold. Alex Orgy won't come in cold, skipping the ball off the field. That's the sign of a cold quarterback. So those are the things right there. Am I worried? No. Do we have to clean up everything? Do we have some things to clean up? Absolutely. Now, I believe in, the offensive cup being half full, not half empty. And I'll tell you why. Donovan Edwards showed up. Not in the stats, but his talent set showed up on the field. He ran the ball. He had some decent, tough runs. He didn't crack one, but that's coming. But he had some decent runs. And of course, it's always going to be a chemistry thing for him because he's not a grinder. He's not a, brute of a back, even though he's 210 pounds. His style is very much like a Herschel Walker where you're going to need to make a hole for him. But if you do, and he hits it lights out, you're chasing. You're in chase mode. Um, Khalil Mullins was a beast. Um, if you gave him 5 more carries, he's going over 100 yards for sure. You give him the ball on the goal line. You know, I didn't like that 3rd and short. I thought he could have had a little more patience on that 3rd and short, um, to maximize that 3rd and short where he was, where the offense was stuffed and he kind of was stuffed on a 0 gain or no gain, -1 yard. So that's something that he may have to work on. But as the second half was underway, you saw the boa constrictor take place. They subbed Crippen in at center, and the offensive line started to click. So maybe the experiment with Dom Jadis is over. Crippen may get the start versus Texas. He looked a little more confident, calling out the jokers and the raiders, the assignments for the offensive line before the ball is snapped. Things looked a little cleaner in the second half, and the coaches went to a more game-controlled method of moving the ball. And especially that last game drive was great. That reminded me a lot of that game drive in the Rose Bowl where Michigan needed a score. They marched down the field and scored. Colston Loveland was a beast, of course, scoring on that last offensive drive. And it was just good to see that when they needed it, they got it. When they were determined to be effective, they could. And maybe the coaches are just like, listen, get this done. And they were like, okay, enough of the preseason, enough of the cupcake attitude, enough of the taking this game light attitude. We're going to buckle up. We're going to put our hand in the dirt and we're going to move. And Khalil Mullins has a little wiggle to him this year, which is going to pay dividends for him in some games where he gets a couple of cracks. That's going to be a big deal. We're going to see him do a lot of big things that way. Now, they have a lot to clean up. Do I think Dom Judice should be benched? No, I think you find a way to work him into the jumbo packages. You find a way to work him into the way that Michigan plays offense in some effective ways. But I think you should start Crippen. I think the center position was always his position to lose. And I would love to see Orji get a full series. I would love to see Orji get a couple of passes, even if it's like a screen pass or a dump route or a RPO or something to that methodology, because they're going to need to keep Texas on their heels and make sure Texas knows that he's going to throw the ball at the same rate that he may run the ball. And that's when I believe somebody like an Orji would be most effective. Yeah. So am I ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Nope. I'm not. And you shouldn't either. And just because Texas played a Colorado State, had a great showing, we don't know what shape Colorado State team is in. That was Texas' cupcake game. And this was supposed to be Michigan's cupcake game against Fresno State, or at least warm-up game to the major game that they're going to play this week coming against each other. Now, I would be a little worried if Michigan blew them out, because now you don't get to see the mistakes that really need to be corrected. And Michigan may take themselves a little too lightly and not prep as much as they need to. So this team will go back. This team will lick their wounds, even though they won. But there's a lot. There's some things to work on, and that's always great as a coach. You don't want to see a team come in, be lights out, or at least roll over a team, even though you see mistakes, and not have an opportunity to correct the mistakes, because then the mistakes show up against better competition, and the winning is kind of like a mirage for the mistakes. Um, so you want to see the mistakes. And you want to work out the kinks. You want to work out your substitution packages. You want to work out who could do what versus what. So that very same pass that went to Frederick Moore, that might go to Marion Walker. Why? Because Marion Walker might have gotten a step on that DB. What's his name? Let me go. Let me get it. Rutledge, I believe his name was. Is that his name? Rutledge? Lockridge. Yeah. He might, Amarion Walker with his speed, he might have got a step or two on Lockridge. And therefore, Davis Warren is confident about putting that ball way out there. You know what I mean? Overthrowing it because he knows Amarion Walker could run up under it. Or Kendrick Bell. I would love to see either one of those two. If you had a taller receiver in that frame and that ball is overthrown, you could defend and bat down that ball before it's an interception. But of course, Frederick Moore, not as tall. I think Frederick Moore is about 6 feet, and then he, in turn, was out of position or doesn't have the frame to play, to rebound that ball in the air, to rebound, position himself, and high point the football. So I would love to see that same call be made by a wide receiver that can high point the football. That would be a great thing. And we have two of them. So we might as well use them. You know what I mean? You might as well see what they can do. And it if nothing, will give Texas something to think about early. Throw that ball deep early like they did. I think they had the same vision in their mind and their game plan. Let's throw it early. Let's give Texas something to think about. And Warren underthrew it. And then, of course, we don't know if a rush was a factor or lots of other things. So I gave the offense overall a C plus grade. I was going to give them a B, but I decided on a C plus. They won the game, but they had to rally fourth quarter. Not because they were ever losing, but they had to rally their effort to pull out the win. And was it a moment of reflection and a moment of grit and determination? Yeah, of course. But they did win the game. And they won it by more than one score. So, and of course, the talent was always better on the Michigan side of the football than it was for Fresno State on whatever side of the ball. Now, Dominic Zavada was very timely in the kicking game, which is going to be a weapon. He was 3 for 3 from some pretty large or pretty deep ranges in the 50s. And that's what you're going to need. You're going to need that based on the way that we run offense. So if we decide to get very ball control with it, and we're somewhere in the 40s or the 30s, and we need to line up and kick a 49-yarder or a 52-yarder, we know somebody who has the leg and the confidence to get that done. And he has the confidence already to get that done. He did it 3 times. He did it, he did it 3 times, 12 points. I'm sorry. Let me look at the stat again. I'm going to make sure I'm giving you guys the right information. Let's see. Player stats. Okay. Michigan. Yeah, 3 for 3, 12 points. Okay. So Zavada, that's a good find. Just like Turner was. He's a great find. And hopefully those things can continue to work in our favor. You know what I mean? So that's really all I have. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I thought it was a good showing for the team. I gave the defense an B plus grade only because I didn't like some of the things that I saw out of them. Some of their run fits, I thought those could be improved. And I didn't like what the penalties that took away some interceptions. So if we can improve on those things, we can blow teams out like we did last year because we have a defense that's, ball. We have a defense full of ball hogs, and that's going to provide the pressure up front to, and we can drop. We could rush 4, drop 7, and most teams are in trouble that way. You know what I mean? And then offensively, I love the way the offense clicked once Crippen got in, and we started doing some things offensively that started to make sense. Colston Loveland started coming on and doing some great things. We leaned on him a bit. We leaned on Khalil Mullings. And I want to see Dom have like uh, be more of a out of the backfield type of catcher. Maybe have them go in some, 2 running back sets with both him and Mullings in a game, and kind of do some rub routes that gets Donovan Edwards open so that he can do his thing as a pass receiver. Um, and then I know once the season wears on, Donovan Edwards is always better as the season wears on versus right away. He gets more of a chemistry with the offensive line. He knows where his blocks are coming from, and he always comes on when the season wears, as the season develops and progresses. So I gave him a C. What grade do I think the offense needs to be to beat Texas? I think they need to have a B plus game. And I think with Crippen starting, that gives the offensive line an opportunity to gel, and an opportunity for most of the people on the line to do what they need to do, find their assignments, and find blitz versus Raider versus Joker, and make it all work in the scheme of beating a team like Texas. Because I do think ball control is the way you beat Texas. You keep their offense off the field. You keep that quarterback cold. You keep Ewers cold, and you control the clock, and you eat it up. You gobble it up with all those great running backs that we have. And, you make it very, very hard for Texas, or you make Texas feel like they have to be in a desperate position to be successful on the field. So easy, Michigan fans. Don't go crazy. Don't jump off the roof. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not that type of thing. We faced a really good Power 5 team. Might be one of the best of the Power 5 teams this year. And we still came out with a pretty convincing win. Now, that game reminded me a lot of the game from last year's schedule versus Bowling Green, where it looked very messy. JJ throws 3 picks, trying to force things. Donovan wasn't hitting the holes right. The offensive line looking like we couldn't look like we could run the ball. And then, of course, the defense has to work hard that game to get them off the field until the offense gets in a rhythm and score some points. So I wouldn't go crazy about what I just saw. Hopefully, and I know these coaches are going to help the young men learn from what they did out there this week. And then in turn, plug and play that special game plan that I believe we're going to have against Texas. Here's the thing. I know everybody's like, "Oh, Warren looks flat. He's not reading the field. This and that. He got the pick." That's what you want to see. You want to see the mistakes early. But Kirk Campbell and Sharon Moore are the offensive minds that were very clutch last year. And they're still together. So you're not going to have weakness in a game plan. I'm telling you, you're not going to have weakness, and you're going to have some surprises in that game plan as well. You're going to have some, really uncanny things that the offense does in certain situations within the game, because they have a chemistry together, planning-wise, that showed up last year in really big ways. And I think we're going to do something very similar to that next week versus Texas. And remember, this is only the second game of the season. Folks are still fresh. Folks are still green behind the ears. They still have to gel as a team, just like we have to gel as a team. And you could catch them slipping. You could catch Texas slipping. You could catch Texas, partying and having a slick attitude and a attitude of, not being humble and all of the rest. And you could catch them in a situation. And guess what? Michigan is just the team to do that. We're the national champs. So if they want to come in thinking that they can, beat us, and if they want to come in overestimating their ability to what they're going to do, just remember the onus is on Texas to beat us. They're the road team. They're the one that's supposed to be Texas on the come up. They're the ones that are supposed to be this juggernaut in college football, getting all the offseason accolades. The pressure is on them to win the game. It's not on Michigan to win the game. If Michigan had it their way, they'd get 25, 30 carries to their running backs, chew up the clock, get 2 turnovers on defense, and put the game away the way that they do it. Texas has to be the more dynamic team up and down the field with all of the transfers that they have and so on and so forth. And don't think that the receiver that transferred from Bama to Texas is all the way acclimated and gelled into that offense yet. Don't think all their transfers and all of the people that they paid big bucks to and with the NIL and all of that, don't think that those kids are all gelled into that offense and they're ready to go, because they're not. They just happen to play a really weak team in Colorado State. So stay tuned this Friday when the Big House Breakdown gets on its regular schedule of preview games every Friday and recap games every Sunday. And I'll lay it out because I'll do some research this week. I'll look at some games. I'll dissect the Texas Colorado State game. I'll look at some stuff that they did last year, and I'll let you know what I see from this Texas offense, because yours could be very streaky, and against, the rumor is against really good teams, he's kind of streaky, and then against cupcakes, he looks like a world beater. So we got to have that quarterback show up, and I think we can. I think with Wink Martindale, I think with the schemes that he can come up with, I think with the amount of talent that we have, I think with the mistakes that we've made that we're going to learn from, and the way that we tested our personnel, we'll be just fine defensively against them. Now it's going to be about what can the offense do to give us a lift. If the defense gives them a short field, we have to take advantage of it. But we'll get involved with that. We'll get into that this Friday. So check that out this Friday, somewhere around, what is it, 6 Eastern, right? When I go over that, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment. Turn on your notifications so that every time the Big House Breakdown has another show, you can be involved and you too can break it down with us on the BHB. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. And as always, go blue. This has been the Big House Breakdown recap and review. All right, y'all. See y'all on Friday.